The snow kept falling, and no one was coming. A young police officer lay broken in the frozen forest, her breath shallow, her body losing warmth by the second. She had been beaten, abandoned, left to disappear beneath the snow. Somewhere in the darkness, her partner, a wounded forest ranger, was crawling through the trees, bleeding, desperate, pressing his radio one last time. His signal was weak, broken, almost lost to the storm. He didn't know who might hear it. He didn't know if anyone was listening at all. But miles away, deep in the wilderness, a Navy SEAL and his K-9 stopped cold. The static in their headsets changed. And, in that single broken transmission, they heard a life slipping away. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit subscribe so you never miss another story of loyalty, courage, and heart. Your support means the world. Snow fell without sound, thick and endless, blanketing the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in a silence so deep it felt ancient. The forest stood frozen, breath held, as if waiting for something to break. Gideon Rourke lay motionless on a ridgeline overlooking the trees below. At 36, his body carried the quiet strength of a man shaped by discipline rather than vanity. Broad shoulders filled his winter gear, and his movements were slow, precise, economical. A short, well-kept beard framed a sharp jawline, and his steel-gray eyes scanned the darkness with the patience of someone who had learned long ago that survival favored the still. Beside him lay his partner. Rex was a German shepherd, 5 years old, built solid and powerful, his thick sable and black coat dusted with snow. His ears twitched constantly, catching frequencies no human could register. Unlike a restless animal, Rex was calm, focused, trained for precision, bonded through trust rather than command. His amber eyes reflected intelligence and loyalty shaped by years of shared danger. Their mission had nothing to do with local law enforcement. Gideon had been deployed on a covert reconnaissance operation, monitoring unusual movement near a remote northern corridor close to the Canadian border. Satellite data suggested irregular traffic patterns. Nothing conclusive, nothing actionable. His orders were simple: observe, confirm, withdraw. No contact, no intervention, no heroics. Yet even in stillness, memories crept in. There had once been a girl next door, 8 years younger. Soft laughter, curious eyes. Her parents had disapproved the moment Gideon chose the military path. Soldiers, they believed, brought only grief. When he left for basic training, she stood on the porch, watching silently. He never saw her again. Some losses didn't scream. They simply stayed. Miles away, deep within the forest, 2 figures moved cautiously through the snow. Officer Mara Quinn was 24, slender but strong. Her movements controlled and deliberate. Her auburn hair was tied into a tight braid beneath her cap, freckles scattered across pale skin flushed by cold. Her eyes held focus and compassion in equal measure. Someone who cared deeply but never hesitated when it mattered. Beside her was Evan Holt, 32, a forest ranger shaped by years of solitude and harsh terrain. His beard was uneven, his jaw worn by cold winds and long nights. Evan had sharp instincts and a quiet persistence that came from knowing the land better than most people knew themselves. 5 months earlier, Evan had noticed something wrong. Wire snares buried beneath pine needles, drag marks leading off established trails, shipping crates with drilled air holes hidden beneath tarps, tire tracks where no trucks should ever go. When he followed those signs, they led him to Mara. Together, they documented patterns, routes, timing, behavior. Tonight, their goal was simple: record evidence and retreat. Once confirmed, they would escalate the findings to Chief Marlene Sato and coordinate with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Michigan DNR, and Homeland Security investigations. They never made it that far. As they approached an abandoned sawmill buried in snow, shadows surged from the tree line. The ambush was violent and sudden, A blow struck Mara's shoulder. Her radio was ripped away. She fought back instinctively, but numbers overwhelmed skill. The world spun. Snow exploded upward as she hit the ground. When consciousness returned, silence had replaced chaos. Mara lay on her side, breath shallow, chest burning. Her head throbbed, vision swimming. Her weapon was gone. Her radio lay shattered several feet away. Blood warmed the snow beneath her cheek before freezing solid. She forced herself to assess the damage. Possible rib fracture, internal bruising, significant blood loss, early hypothermia. Her body was already beginning to fail. The cold gnawed deeper with each breath. Her fingers numbed. Her thoughts slowed. She knew the sequence too well. Confusion, drowsiness, false warmth. Death followed quietly after that. She tried to move. Pain lanced through her chest and she gasped, collapsing back into the snow. Evan would come back. He had to. But the forest offered no reassurance, only the sound of wind sliding through frozen branches. Somewhere far beyond her fading awareness, a signal would soon break through the silence, one she would never hear herself. And far away, in the dark, a soldier and his German shepherd would feel the moment everything changed. The cold arrived before the pain. It crept in slowly, wrapping around Mara Quinn's limbs like a living thing, stealing sensation one nerve at a time. She lay half buried in snow, her body twisted at an angle that sent sharp warnings through her ribs every time she breathed. Above her, the forest stretched endlessly. Black trunks, white ground, a sky swallowed by falling snow. She tried to move. Her left arm responded weakly. Her right screamed in protest. Mara closed her eyes, forcing herself to stay calm. Panic wasted heat. Panic killed. She had been trained for this, at least in theory. At 24, Mara Quinn was still new to the badge, but not naive. She was tall and lean, with copper-red hair usually tied into a practical braid that now lay tangled against her cheek. Her skin, normally freckled and warm-toned, had gone pale beneath the cold. She had grown up hiking forests like this one, raised by a father who believed resilience mattered more than comfort. That upbringing had shaped her into someone who refused to quit, even when her body begged her to. Her radio lay a few feet away, cracked and silent. Her gun was gone. Her breath came shallow, fogging weakly in the air. She forced herself to assess the damage the way she'd been trained. Head, no dizziness yet. Ribs, sharp pain on the right side, possibly fractured. Legs, numb, but still attached to her will. Blood loss? Yes, but not catastrophic yet. Hypothermia was the real enemy now. Mara focused on small movements, curling her fingers into the snow, flexing her toes inside her boots. She whispered numbers under her breath, grounding herself. 1, 2, 3. The forest answered with silence. Her thoughts drifted, uninvited, toward Evan. Evan Holt had always walked a few steps ahead of her on the trail, not because he thought she couldn't keep up, but because he believed in clearing danger first. He was 32, with weathered features shaped by years outdoors, brown hair always unruly, eyes kind but alert. A man who loved the forest enough to protect it, even when it hurt him. She remembered the moment everything went wrong. The sudden movement, the rush of boots, the crack of impact, being dragged, struck, disarmed. Evan shouting her name as he fought his way free. Then nothing. Her chest tightened as fear tried to claw its way up her throat. He ran, she reminded herself. He had to. That thought kept her alive. She pictured him moving through the trees, limping but determined, blood marking his path. Evan was stubborn in the way only good men were. He wouldn't stop until help came. She inhaled slowly, counting again. 4, 5. Her body trembled uncontrollably now. The cold had sunk deeper, numbing her fingers, her face, her thoughts. She knew the signs. She had studied them. The dangerous calm that followed panic. The false warmth. She pressed her palms into the snow, forcing sensation back into herself. Pain flared. Good. Pain meant she was still here. The forest creaked around her. Branches groaned under ice. Wind whispered through the trees like distant voices, almost human, almost calling her name. She wanted to answer, but she didn't. Because if she did, she feared she would never stop. Her breathing slowed despite her efforts. The world blurred at the edges. Darkness curled in like a tide. Stay awake, she told herself. Just a little longer. She thought of Evan again, of the way he'd smiled earlier that day, confident, steady. She imagined him pushing forward through the storm, refusing to quit. "He'll come back," she whispered. "He always does." The wind answered with a hollow moan. Snow continued to fall, heavier now, blanketing the ground in white silence. The forest offered no comfort, no reply. Only the slow ticking of time. And in that growing stillness, as the cold wrapped tighter around her fading strength, Mara clung to a single fragile hope. That she could hold on long enough to hear his footsteps again. The forest held its breath. Gideon Rourke lay still against the frozen slope, his breathing slow, controlled, the kind drilled into muscle memory through years of war. Snow clung to the seams of his jacket, melting and refreezing with every measured exhale. His gloved fingers rested lightly against the receiver clipped near his collar. Then it came. A crackle. Thin, uneven, almost imagined. At first he thought it was interference. Wind could do that. Ice could bend frequencies. But this sound carried intention. Panic buried beneath static. "Anyone, please." The voice fractured, broke, returned in jagged pieces. Not military, not encrypted. Raw, human. Gideon's spine stiffened. "Officer? Ambush? Sawmill? She's down." The transmission staggered like a dying heartbeat. The voice wasn't trained. It wasn't calm. It was desperation stripped bare. Then silence. Rex's ears snapped upright. The German shepherd rose slowly to his paws, muscles tense, breath shallow. His dark coat bristled as if he'd felt the sound rather than heard it. His amber eyes fixed on Gideon, alert and questioning. Gideon didn't move. His mind raced through possibilities. False transmission, interference, bait. The kind of trap that had killed good men before. But something about the voice gnawed at him. It hadn't asked for rescue. It had begged for acknowledgement. He keyed the radio. "Unidentified caller. This is Echo 1. Repeat your last transmission." Static answered. He tried again. Nothing. The signal was gone. Gideon exhaled slowly, then switched frequencies, scanning for bleed-through. Nothing but snow noise and silence. Somewhere, someone had reached out into the void and been swallowed by it. He opened the secured channel to command. "Command, this is Echo 1. I intercepted an unverified distress signal. Possible law enforcement down. Location approximate. North of the old sawmill corridor. Requesting guidance." The reply came swiftly, cold and measured. "Echo 1, negative. Your current tasking takes priority. That transmission could be environmental interference or hostile deception. You are not authorized to disengage. Maintain position." The voice belonged to Commander Vance Calder. Calder was a tall man with iron-gray hair and a face carved by decades of command. His voice carried authority shaped by experience. Afghanistan, Iraq, places where hesitation cost lives. He was respected for a reason. He didn't gamble with his teams. "This isn't our op," Calder continued. "Local law enforcement handles local problems. You are not to compromise mission integrity." Gideon closed his eyes. The words should have settled him. Instead, something old stirred beneath his ribs. He remembered a woman standing on a front porch, hands shaking as a uniformed officer spoke words that split her world in two. He remembered the silence after, the way grief hollowed people out. He remembered a teammate bleeding out in a valley in Pakistan while extraction was denied. Too risky, too exposed. He remembered carrying that weight ever since. He opened his eyes. Rex stood beside him now, steady and quiet, Snow clinging to his muzzle. The dog's gaze never wavered. There was no fear there, only trust. "Command," Gideon said quietly. "I acknowledge." Then he cut the channel. The silence afterward felt heavier than any order. He turned to Rex and knelt, resting his forehead briefly against the dog's. "We're going," he murmured. "Just you and me." Rex gave a low, steady huff. Agreement. They moved. Mara Quinn drifted in and out of awareness, the world narrowing to fragments. Cold no longer stabbed, it seeped, soft and consuming. Her thoughts slowed, unraveling at the edges. She tried to remember her mother's voice, the way warmth felt. Her body responded with nothing but numb obedience. She didn't know how long she'd been still when a sound reached her. Distant, muffled, almost imagined. Not footsteps, not wind. A radio tone. Her eyes fluttered open. Darkness pressed close. She tried to speak, but her lips barely moved. "Here!" The word vanished into the snow. Far away, boots crunched softly over frozen ground. Gideon moved with precision, reading the forest like a map written in shadow. Broken twigs, a disturbed drift, a smear of dark against white. Rex caught the scent and veered left, muscles coiling as he followed the trail. The air changed. There, something human. Gideon dropped to a knee, scanning. His heart hitched when he saw her shape against the snow. Too still, too small. "Mara," he breathed, though he had never known her name. He reached her side, hands already assessing damage. Pulse, faint. Breathing, shallow. Skin ice cold. She was alive. Barely. Rex whined softly, pressing his body against her to shield her from the wind. Gideon pulled off his outer layer and wrapped it around her, working fast. He checked for bleeding, stabilized her ribs as best he could, and leaned close. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "I've got you." Her lips trembled. A whisper escaped. "Evan?" "He's coming," Gideon said, though he didn't know if it was true. "You did good. You held on." Her eyes fluttered once more, then closed. Gideon looked toward the dark forest, jaw tightening. Whatever had done this was still out there, and he was done waiting. Snow swallowed sound as Gideon moved, every step measured, every breath controlled. The forest no longer felt empty. It felt alert, watching. Mara drifted in and out of consciousness in his arms, her body frighteningly light. The shivering had stopped, not from warmth, but from failure. That was the danger. Her skin had lost its color, pale beneath a thin layer of frost, lips tinged faintly blue. Her auburn hair clung to her face in damp strands, darkened with sweat and snowmelt. She looked smaller now, fragile in a way she never had before. Rex moved ahead, low and silent, his German shepherd frame cutting through the trees with fluid precision. His nose hovered inches above the ground, tracking scent through frozen chaos. Blood, fear, human sweat, and something else darker. His ears twitched sharply. A low growl rolled in his chest, not loud, but warning. Gideon followed the dog's body language instinctively. Years of combat had trained him to read movement like language. The signs were clear. Someone had been here recently. More than one. Organized. Deliberate. He lowered Mara gently against a fallen log and knelt beside her, gloved hands already working. He checked her pulse again. Weak, but present. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. He pressed 2 fingers against her ribs, careful, precise. Fracture. Possibly 2. Her body temperature was dropping fast. "Stay with me," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him clearly. He pulled a compact thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it tightly around her torso, sealing in what little warmth remained. Then he activated 2 chemical heat packs, slipping them under her arms and along her sides, close enough to help, not enough to burn. Years ago, in a frozen valley halfway across the world, he had learned how fast the human body surrendered to cold. He would not let it happen again. Mara stirred weakly. Her lips parted. "Evan." The name broke through him like a blade. "He's coming," Gideon said, voice low but firm. "You're safe now." He wasn't sure that was true. Rex froze suddenly, muscles locking. His head snapped toward the tree line. The dog's ears flattened as a faint scent drifted through the wind. Metallic, oily, wrong. Blood mixed with gun oil. Gideon scanned the area. Tracks, boot prints, partially erased but unmistakable. Multiple individuals. Organized movement. Not hunters, not locals. This wasn't random violence. His jaw tightened. Whoever had done this hadn't meant to scare her. They'd meant to erase her. He lifted Mara again, adjusting his grip to minimize pressure on her chest. She weighed almost nothing now, and that frightened him more than anything else. Rex took point, moving fast but silent, choosing terrain that broke scent trails, down into a shallow frozen creek, across jagged stone, then back into the trees. They moved like ghosts. The old hunting cabin emerged from the darkness nearly 40 minutes later, half buried in snow, its roof sagging under winter's weight. It wasn't much. 4 walls, a door, a rusted stove, but it would shelter them for now. Inside, Gideon worked quickly. He cleared the floor, laid down insulating layers, then eased Mara onto them. Her breathing hitched as he adjusted her position. He spoke softly, grounding her even as his hands moved with practiced efficiency. He checked her pupils again. Still reactive. A good sign. Rex circled the cabin once, then positioned himself near the door, body tense, ears angled toward the forest. Every instinct in him screamed that they were not alone. Gideon keyed his radio, keeping his voice low. "Command, this is Echo 1. I have located the injured officer. Female, severe hypothermia, possible rib fractures, internal trauma. I'm sheltering in place at a remote cabin. Request immediate medevac support." Static. Then Calder's voice tight with restrained anger. "Echo 1, you were ordered to hold position." "She'll die if I don't act," Gideon replied evenly. A pause, long enough to weigh lives. "Extraction is not immediately possible," Calder said finally. "Weather's closing in. You're on your own for at least 6 hours. Hold position. Defend if necessary." The line went dead. Gideon exhaled slowly. He turned back to Mara. Her breathing was shallow but steady now. Her eyelids fluttered. "Stay with me," he said quietly. "You're not done yet." Outside, the wind rose, carrying with it a faint scent of iron. Rex's growl deepened. Someone was moving in the trees, and they were not alone anymore. The cabin emerged like a scar in the forest, half buried under snow and time. Wind clawed at its warped wooden walls, howling through gaps like a living thing searching for breath. Gideon pushed the door open with his shoulder, the hinges crying out before surrendering. Inside, the air was stale and cold, thick with the scent of old pine and rusted iron. He laid Mara down gently on the wooden floor, moving with the same care he would give a wounded teammate on foreign soil. Her body felt alarmingly light in his arms, as if the cold had already begun claiming pieces of her. He slid his jacket beneath her shoulders, then pulled a thermal blanket over her torso, sealing in what little warmth remained. Mara's skin was pale, almost translucent beneath the grime and dried blood. Her auburn hair clung to her temples, damp with melted snow. Her freckles, once warm and lively, looked like faded constellations against frost-touched skin. She was young, too young to be lying this still in a place meant for no one. Rex lay beside her immediately, pressing his broad flank against her ribs. The German shepherd's thick coat radiated heat, his steady breathing a quiet rhythm in the dark. At 5 years old, he was in his prime, muscular, alert, eyes sharp with purpose. His ears twitched at every sound outside, but he did not move from her side. Gideon worked quickly. He checked her pulse again, weak but present. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. He adjusted her position to ease pressure on her chest, then slipped chemical heat packs beneath her arms and along her sides. His hands moved with practiced precision, the kind born from years of battlefield medicine. Stay with me, he said quietly, his voice low and steady. You're doing good. Her eyelids fluttered. Cold, she whispered. I know, he replied. I've got you. Outside, the wind howled louder, battering the cabin walls. Snow hissed against the windows like sand. Gideon moved to the corner, igniting a small fire with what dry wood he could find. The flames licked upward, weak but alive. He keyed his radio again. Command, this is Echo 1. I have secured temporary shelter. 1 female officer, severe hypothermia, possible thoracic trauma. I need support. Static. Then, Commander Vance Calder's voice cut through, controlled, steady, carrying the weight of command. Echo 1, copy. Extraction team is mobilizing. 6 hours minimum due to weather and terrain. Hold position. Do not engage unless necessary. Gideon clenched his jaw. 6 hours might as well have been a lifetime. Understood, he said. The channel went silent. Mara stirred again, eyes half open. My partner, Evan. Gideon knelt beside her. Tell me. Her voice shook. We were watching them. The group. They're organized. Armed. They knew we were there. They took my radio. Evan ran to get help. Her breath hitched. Fear crept into her eyes. He's hurt. Gideon felt the weight of the decision settle into his chest. Outside, the storm intensified. Wind rattled the door as if something were testing it. He stood slowly, pacing once, then stopping before her. I need you to listen to me, he said. I'm going to find him. Her eyes widened. You can't. It's too dangerous. I know. His voice softened. But leaving him out there means he dies. He reached into his gear and pulled out a compact sidearm, placing it gently in her hand. He adjusted her grip, guiding her fingers. If anyone comes through that door, anyone you don't recognize, you aim center mass and don't hesitate. His gaze held hers. You don't fire unless you have to. She swallowed, nodding faintly. He showed her how to listen for footsteps through the snow, how to tell the difference between wind and movement, how to stay still, how to survive. I'll be back, he said quietly, but if they break in, you live. Rex rose, muscles coiling, eyes locked on Gideon. The dog understood. Gideon pulled on his gloves, shouldered his pack, and opened the door. Cold rushed in like a living thing. Before stepping out, he glanced back once more. Mara watched him, eyes wide but steady. Then he was gone. The door closed. Silence swallowed the cabin. Outside, 2 shadows moved into the storm. Man and dog, heading toward a trail stained with blood and fear, chasing the last echo of a man who had run for his life. The forest had grown unnaturally quiet. Evan Holt staggered forward through the trees, every step a negotiation with pain. His right leg dragged slightly, soaked in blood that had already begun to darken and stiffen against the freezing air. At 32, Evan had always been lean rather than strong, his body shaped by years of long patrols and rough terrain rather than brute force. His face, usually calm and sun-weathered, was now drawn tight with exhaustion. A shallow cut ran across his temple, blood frozen in his hair. His breath came in ragged bursts, fogging the air in front of him like a failing engine. He no longer knew where he was going, only that he had to move. The cold had begun to creep inward, dulling sensation, slowing thought. His hands shook as he tried to adjust the broken radio clipped to his jacket. The screen flickered weakly, light stuttering like a dying heartbeat. He pressed the transmit button again, lips trembling. "Officer down. Need help. Near the sawmill." The words fractured into static. His voice vanished into the trees. Evan sagged against a trunk, fighting the urge to sit, to rest. He had seen what happened when people stopped moving in cold like this. He forced himself forward again, boots dragging through snow that felt heavier with every step. He did not know it, but somewhere beyond the ridge, that broken signal had already been heard. Far to the south, shadows moved between the trees. They were men shaped by violence, wrapped in dark winter gear that swallowed light. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar cutting across his cheek, moved with controlled confidence. His name was Lucas Hale, a trafficker who had learned early that hesitation got people killed. His eyes were cold, calculating, scanning the terrain with practiced ease. Behind him moved two others, quiet, disciplined, armed. They weren't soldiers, but they had learned how to survive like ones. When the radio signal crackled through their receiver, distorted and weak, Hale slowed. "Someone's still alive," he muttered. A thin smile touched his lips. Loose ends were dangerous things. They changed direction without a word. Gideon felt it before he saw it. The shift in the air, the subtle pressure that came when danger moved nearby. Rex stiffened, nose low, muscles coiling like a drawn bow. Blood. Fresh. "Easy," Gideon whispered. They crested a shallow ridge, and there he was. Evan lay slumped against a tree, barely conscious, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. His face was ashen, lips tinged blue. His chest rose unevenly. Gideon dropped to his knees beside him instantly. "Hey, stay with me." Evan's eyes fluttered open. Recognition flickered there. She alive?" "Yes," Gideon said firmly. "You did good." Relief softened Evan's expression just for a moment. Then his body sagged. Gideon worked fast. He tightened a field tourniquet around Evan's thigh, packed the wound and wrapped him in thermal insulation. His movements were efficient, calm, muscle memory forged in places far worse than this. Rex hovered close, whining softly, pressing his warmth against Evan's side. "We're getting you out," Gideon said. "Both of you." He hauled Evan to his feet, bracing the man's weight against his shoulder. Every step back toward the cabin was a battle. The wind had shifted, snow thickening, visibility shrinking. Gideon adjusted their path, deliberately crossing frozen streams and rocky ground to mask their trail. By the time the cabin came into view, Gideon's muscles burned and his breath rasped in his chest. Inside, the light still glowed faintly. Mara stirred when the door creaked open. Her face was pale, eyes sunken but alert. When she saw Evan, a sound broke from her chest, half sob, half breath. "Evan!" "I'm here," he managed. "Still here." Gideon laid him down carefully, reinforcing the shelter with quick, practiced movements. He secured the door, rigged noise traps along the perimeter, hanging cans, loose metal, anything that would betray movement. He checked firing angles, escape paths, blind spots. The storm intensified outside, snow lashing against the walls. Rex stationed himself near the door, ears erect, low growl vibrating in his chest. Gideon crouched between the two injured officers, his mind racing. They were alive, for now, but he could feel it, deep in his bones. They were not alone anymore. Beyond the tree line, shapes moved. The hunters had followed the blood. The alarm line trembled. A faint metallic clink, barely louder than breath, rippled through the cabin. To anyone else it might have sounded like nothing. To Gideon Rourke, it was the sound of inevitability. "They're here," he whispered. Outside, the storm had softened, but the forest felt wrong. Too quiet, too alert. Snow drifted in slow spirals, catching what little moonlight remained. Gideon raised one hand, signaling silence. Mara and Evan froze where they sat, their breathing shallow, controlled. Rex's ears flattened as a low growl vibrated in his chest, the kind that came from instinct rather than fear. Gideon shifted his weight, eyes scanning the shadows beyond the window. The attackers moved with discipline now. No shouting, no rushed footsteps. These were men who understood timing. He leaned close to Mara. Her face was pale but focused, freckles faint beneath the cold sheen of her skin. Her auburn hair clung damply to her cheeks, and though pain lined her expression, her eyes were sharp. She had survived this far not by luck, but by will. "Remember," Gideon whispered, placing the sidearm back into her trembling hand. "Short breath, steady aim. Only if you must." She nodded once. Evan, pale and sweating, braced himself against the wall. His leg throbbed violently, but his eyes were alert. Despite the blood loss, his posture was rigid with resolve. He had always been the kind of man who endured quietly, whose strength showed not in noise but in persistence. A shadow crossed the frost-glazed window, then another. The first shot shattered the silence. Wood splintered as a round tore through the outer wall. Gideon responded instantly. One controlled burst toward the muzzle flash. He shifted positions before the echo faded, rolling behind a beam as return fire shredded the space he'd occupied seconds earlier. The cabin filled with smoke and splinters. Rex lunged through the doorway with a snarl that cut through the chaos. His powerful body struck one of the attackers mid-step, driving him back into the snow. A gunshot cracked. Rex yelped as the round tore through his shoulder, but he did not release. He held on, teeth locked, until the man collapsed, screaming. "Rex!" Gideon shouted. The dog stumbled back inside, bleeding but alive, eyes still blazing with purpose. Mara fired once. Clean. Controlled. The shot forced another attacker into cover. They were being pressed from all sides now. Gideon moved like a ghost, firing, repositioning, drawing them where he wanted. He shattered a lantern to flood the yard with smoke, then kicked open the side door to create confusion. The attackers shouted to one another, voices edged with panic. They hadn't expected resistance. They hadn't expected a soldier, and they hadn't expected time to betray them, because far beyond the trees, the night answered. A low thunder rolled across the sky. Then another. The sound of rotors. Blue and red lights sliced through the storm as armored vehicles surged through the tree line. SEAL Team 5 hit the perimeter in practiced silence. Weapons trained, commands sharp and final. "Drop your weapons!" The attackers froze. Some ran. They didn't get far. Chief Marlene Sato stepped forward from the line, her short dark hair pulled tight beneath her cap, eyes hard and unyielding. She'd built her career on patience and precision, and tonight, both paid off. Within minutes, it was over. Gideon sank against the wall, exhaustion crashing through him. Medics rushed in, stabilizing Evan and Mara, wrapping Rex's wounded shoulder with practiced hands. As they were loaded onto the medevac helicopter, the storm finally broke. Dawn crept over the trees in pale gold ribbons. The recovery was slow, but real. Mara healed with quiet determination, her strength returning day by day. Evan underwent surgery and months of rehab, walking again with a limp he wore like a badge of survival. Rex recovered fully, earning commendations that meant nothing to him, except that Gideon was still there. Gideon faced consequences, of course, official reprimands, quiet warnings, but behind closed doors, Commander Vance Calder placed a hand on his shoulder. "You broke protocol," he said evenly, "but you saved lives. Don't make a habit of it." The words were stern. The eyes were not. Months later, a small building rose at the edge of the forest, a wildlife recovery center born from pain and perseverance. Mara and Evan ran it together, helping injured animals find their way back to the wild. The town supported them fully. On the night of their wedding, beneath soft lights and falling snow, Gideon stood beside Rex, watching as laughter filled the air. For the first time in years, his chest felt light. Some promises, he realized, were worth breaking orders for, and some souls, once saved, never truly walk alone again. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive with thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes, they come quietly, wrapped in courage, carried by tired hands, or hidden inside a heart that refuses to give up. In this story, no one was saved by luck. They were saved by choices, by a man who refused to walk away, by a woman who held on when everything told her to let go, by a dog who stayed loyal when fear said to run, and maybe, just maybe, by something greater watching over them all. Many of us go through seasons where the world feels cold, where help feels far away, and hope feels thinner than the snow beneath our feet. But stories like this remind us that even in the darkest hours, someone may be moving toward us, quietly, faithfully, guided by something they can't fully explain. Some call it courage, some call it love, some call it faith, others simply call it God. If this story touched your heart, maybe it's not by accident. Maybe it's a reminder to check on someone you've been thinking about, to offer kindness when it's inconvenient, to believe that even when you feel unseen, your life still matters deeply. And if you're going through a difficult season right now, know this: you are not forgotten. You are not alone, and your story is not over. If this message meant something to you,